Hello, everyone, and welcome everyone to this presentation that Marty is going to provide for us on Introduction to WikiTree, a personal perspective. Marty has been researching his family history since 1999 after having caught the bug from his mom and dad. Marty joined WikiTree in 2014 and recently joined the 100K Contributions Club. His areas of focus on WikiTree include surname studies, data doctoring, Scotland, and pre-1500 work. Past WikiTree volunteer efforts have included rangering and volunteering at the WikiTree Roots Tech booth. He is a board member of the Downers Grove Historical Society and past board member of CAGGNI, Computer Assisted Genealogy Group of Northern Illinois. Thank you so much, Marty, for giving us this presentation. We're really excited to hear what you have to say. I'm just going to go ahead
Thanks for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. So I've become sort of in the Chicago area, kind of an advocate for WikiTree. So I've spoken at libraries and different genealogy groups, generally to an audience that's not familiar with WikiTree. So when they made a call out for our first WikiTree day here, they reached out to me for a presentation. So I can do my basic one, but I've got one of those that are available, and they said yes to that. So it might be a little bit interesting because I'm assuming most people know WikiTree, but hopefully I've got a few people in here that are not familiar with WikiTree. So
that'll be great. So if everybody can just save their questions till the end, we'll have a question and answer session at that time. Marty, the screen is all yours.
Okay, good. Have you got me? Am I scrolling yet? I'm not having any luck. I'm sharing screens and not having any luck with the scroll with either mouse scrolling or I'm scrolling in the window here. I assume you still see a slide up, the intro slide of mine.
Yeah, we have the slide showing up there. Can you try maybe your arrow key on your keyboard?
Yeah, I tried that too.
Oh, there's your mouse. There you go.
Okay, good.
All right.
So I'm just seeing my background. I'm not seeing you anymore. So just chirp in if you're trying to flag me down or something. So as you already gave a little bit of my background, so I don't think I'll cover this too much. The one comment I used to work in the software industry. I retired a couple of years ago. I just didn't have enough time for genealogy and work at the same time. So work had to take a hit. The one aspect I would say now that has changed, that happens is, I think many genealogists, perhaps if you have the ability to travel, is all of a sudden now family vacations, I'm always finding some way to incorporate genealogy in our vacations when we're driving somewhere. We'll steer the car this direction where I may or may not have an ancestor. So and my wife has been absolutely wonderful about encouraging and participating in those events to the point of sitting around, copying books for hours on end while I'm doing the more interesting research. So, so one thing I do when I do a talk, I like to just at least set an expectation of what I hope the audience gets out of this talk. One is I'm trying to get a basic understanding of WikiTree with an audience that, again, typically would not know WikiTree. But if you are experienced with WikiTree or used it for a while, hopefully there'll be some interesting takeaways here. Also want to give a roadmap to getting started with WikiTree. So it is a little bit different than some places where you just sign up and you just you're going nuts here, and you can go wild within just minutes. And then also talk through some of the features that I find most compelling. And having participated in WikiTree now for 8 years, there's a little bit of something for everybody. So some of the stuff I may be interested in may not appeal to you, others may. So and you're within a 45-minute session here, you're not going to hear everything. I'm not going to tell you everything what you can possibly do in WikiTree. So what I thought I'd start off with is, what is a wiki? So I think most people are familiar with something called Wikipedia, where it started probably 15 years ago now, 20 years ago, as an online encyclopedia with marginal acceptance. And, it wasn't considered terribly reliable, for the first many years. And I think over time it became a very well-respected, not perfect, but a place to gather general information about nearly any topic. So I always thought that was a cool technology that could be applied to genealogy. Something like Wikipedia, though, is you can't put any article out there. I'll give you an example. The biggest thing is there's a notability, so it has to be broadly important category. So, for example, my brother has a page out on Wikipedia simply because he played professional football. I don't, because I don't do anything that significant yet in life. There's always hope, though. So with WikiTree, we have a wiki where we can basically put pages out there for any person that wouldn't be accepted on something like Wikipedia. So the other thing with wikis in terms of online pages and online websites, you tend to have a very strong amount of linking. So if you're on a page, you can almost always click to other things of interest. I find when I go into Wikipedia, all of a sudden, 10 or 15 minutes later, I'm looking at something I had no intention of being at. And you can kind of do the same thing in WikiTree. I'm looking at one ancestor, and then all of a sudden I'm in some other part of the tree I didn't expect. So, but examples of wikis are, again, you probably get a little more personal interests here. There's things like a place called Fandom, places like Star Trek, Mission Impossible, where people go ad infinitum on each episode and each character that's been, and producers and writers and things like that. So they can talk about any topics they want. Same things happens with WikiTree. We go ad infinitum for any topic related to our relatives, and there's these things called free space pages that are, if a page isn't specifically about an individual or something like that, you can create those also. So WikiTree is kind of unique in that it is a free. You don't have. I'll give you a couple of ways to participate in WikiTree. Don't sign up at all. Just look at the content. You can lurk, if you will, and learn what's people have put out about your potential ancestors. You can also join. It's a free thing to do. There's a little bit of a hurdle you go through with it, and that we basically want to make sure that people are really genealogists, and that they're really human beings that log in. So when you see stuff in the news about bot accounts and things like that on other social websites that have gone that have just exploded, that's really not an issue on WikiTree. So I also like the fact that you can privatize information on WikiTree in a more flexible way than you can on many other genealogy websites and programs. WikiTree is also at its core, it is certainly a place to have a shared collaborative tree, but it's much more. The community is much more than that. So, and I hope I'll be able to communicate some of that as we go through the session today. So who is WikiTree? So I've kind of covered the what is it. So I've got a picture here from I think this is from Roots Tech a few years ago, before the pandemic. So in the middle is Chris, our leader, and we've got a number of the people that are volunteers, and some are employees. WikiTree is a fairly small organization. I don't know how many employees today, but at one point I think it was less, around a dozen or less. So it is 90% of, and those people are very core to keep the software up and running and moderate the site at a very high level. But what makes WikiTree successful is the large amount of volunteers we have. So, and I would lump myself into that large group of volunteers. So WikiTree's been around for about 14 years now. Started by Chris Whitten, who was in the middle of the last screen. And I just took a snapshot of some of the latest number of members. We're getting close to 1 million registered members. That's not 1 million people that are, excuse me, that are active every day. Some people just logged in, did a little bit of work, and moved on. 215,000 actually signed the honor code, which I'll talk about in a moment. We've got 32 million profiles out here, and 10 million of them are connected via DNA tests, which is really kind of a interesting capability of feature of WikiTree. So, so I'm going to start a couple of slides. Got a couple of slides here to talk about kind of the boring aspect of getting registered. It's a little bit different than some other sites that I mentioned before. The first thing you do is you'll go to a page, enter some basic information about yourself. You will get an email then. It may take a few minutes, may take a few hours. There's actually real live people behind the scenes looking at these requests to join. It is not, you know, on the screen. You'll get a. I'll show you in a moment. But so you'll have a greeter reach out to you and say, "Oh, hey, why are you interested in genealogy?" And part of this is we just want to get people that are real genealogists, real humans, and it's a spam protection device. And the other thing we'll ask you to do before you participate is sign what's called the honor code. We do have certain standards for behavior so that it's a warm, inviting community. And I got to tell you, you know, given the other places that I go on the internet, it's a wonderful feature of WikiTree, to be blunt. So there's a simple registration page where you put your name and your first and last name. You choose a password for yourself, reasonably secure. We do have age requirements here, and then also your standard CAPTCHA, reCAPTCHA here to make sure you're not a bot. That's a first protection against that. And then the second thing, you'll get an email and it'll ask you some questions like I mentioned before. And then there's an honor code that will ask people to that we ask people to sign. So I've taken the page right off of our website. The highlighting here is not me. This is what we highlight in the text on the website. So there's 9 key parts of the honor code. I always spend too much time on this because it's kind of core to what we do. We collaborate. It's not a place to just dump a tree. You are participating in a tree where it's not like Ancestry where you have your own tree and other people have their trees and you get to go off in your own little way. So if you've got a great grandparent that's notable, you may be working with other people, expanding and adding more information to that ancestor. We're very focused on the accuracy of the tree. It's every profile you see out here is not perfect yet, but we're working on it. You also have to assume there's different levels of skills with people in the community, and just assume mistakes are unintentional. You know, I've even had points where it's like, I can't believe they changed my great-great-grandfather to say that, or they left a typo on this page. So be kind and you know, pretend you're, you know, try to imagine that you're in their position if you've done something kind of boneheaded. It's a very courteous place. Hopefully, if you've been sat on yesterday's meetings or you've participated in WikiTree some, it's just it's a very homey, friendly kind of place to be. We do respect privacy. I'll talk about that in a moment. Copyrights, we discourage people from cutting and pasting. You know, there are old books that are not in copyright, but it's not really great style to just cut and paste things from other locations. And in some cases, in many cases, it's a copyright violation. People like to take find engrave pages and cut and paste them wholesale. They stick out they stick out on a page when you do that because they have a certain formatting. So, you know, don't do stuff like that. And credit people, credit your sources. So, and we cite sources, and we're kind of rigorous about sourcing. So we strive to improve sourcing on all of our profiles out here. So, and where the goal is to keep the information as free and open as possible. So I got a link down here for the honor code. So getting started, this is getting harder to do because it's been 8 years since I started on WikiTree. You want to create your profile. You'll create your own page for yourself. And typically, like you would if you were just using paper, start filling in your parents and grandparents and different family members. You can privatize those to certain degrees. So we'd encourage you to do that. You can import via GEDCOM. I'm not a big fan of that. There's other people that do it. So we do have some limitations so that everybody doesn't try to create Charlemagne again. So one of the restrictions we put in, or controls we put in the last few years, is to, I think it goes back to, you can only do a GED come back to 1700. Before 1700, the assumption is that those profiles are more than likely already, on WikiTree. So there is a nice article for newbies, for new folks to start climbing the tree here that I've mentioned. You can just Google how to start climbing a WikiTree with the WikiTree in there. So there's also a very nice help system. So if you're ever lost on WikiTree, up in the upper right-hand side, click on help, and you'll see help on many of the pages. You'll see YouTube training videos that are performed have been developed largely by the user community and people passionate about certain areas. So, and I had a moment where it's kind of interesting using WikiTree when I first started off, and I got to the point where I started putting in parents and grandparents, and I started putting in a great grandparent. I think it was on my Porterfield side, and he was already there. And it was like, that was kind of my, what I call my Snoopy happy dog moment, my happy dance moment. So I got all excited, probably got up and did some, I don't know if I physically did a dance, but I got kind of excited about that. And hopefully you'll have that same experience. So what I wanted to do is show you some basic screens that or pages you'll see. I've chosen one that the screens in WikiTree can be a bit busy, so but they're well designed. So what I thought I'd do is kind of focus on the sections of the screens. So so this is my great grandfather. As you can, there's a little tag up here that says that. So I've researched him. I'm pretty much the only person researching him. But what you have on a page is you have a section on the upper left-hand side, which is sort of, think of it as your genealogy program. That's where it lists the parents, the siblings, the spouses, the children of that person. You also, given the linking on this, you can click all around here and go up and down your tree. You've got a really nice built-in ancestor display that'll blow out I think that will show 4 generations of your ancestors. You can show the descendants here. You've also got a DNA section over on the right-hand side that I'll talk a little bit more about that later. You can put images on here. The images, you can tag an image to be used as a primary image at the top of the page. And then you can write, one of the things I like is there's a lot of genealogy programs out there that, I use Family Tree Maker, and I'm very happy Family Tree Maker user. It does some really cool things, but they're not really great at for storytelling. You can put raw text into into many of these fields in just sort of you have up to 500 characters or something like that. One of the things I like about WikiTree is I'm trying hard to tell stories about my ancestors, and you can do that kind of nicely here. So, so I've started working on some of his information. Having sat in on our symposium yesterday, I sat on one session about Scottish, no, mine's Scottish rites, about Masonic organizations. He was in the Scottish rites. So I've got I've got a big diagram for this person, and now I want to put him on. So I want to put more information about him being in the Scottish rites, and so that's not here yet. So we're going to do that sometime soon, because I got excited about learning about that yesterday at the symposium. So yeah, so you and to change all this information, there's an edit button here. You can see all the images. There's lots of tools that would take hours to go into. But when you start using WikiTree, just be open and be fearless and click in and take a look at some of these things. So that's what the top of the page looks like. And the bottom of the page, I had mentioned that we're really big into sourcing. So this profile would be a relatively mature profile in that it's got a lot of sources. And if you look closely, there's numbers up here at the top. So these are called inline references. And you can put those in your text so that they show up at the bottom. That's probably considered preferable. It's not required. So if you've got someone you just don't know much about, and you've just got a find a grave page or 1 or 2 census records, that's okay. Put them in there. Put them in there just as a list at the bottom. And but make sure you have a reasonable. We are really gung ho about making sure these are well sourced. So, and if possible, try to find a free source versus a paid source. So I tend to, if something's in Family Search and Ancestry, I'll tend to put a reference in to Family Search so that anyone else can see that information. I'd commented a little bit about on privacy before. If you've ever downloaded a GEDCOM, you might have noticed you have the ability to privatize living or dead people. WikiTree's come up with something a little more flexible than that, quite a bit more flexible than that, I would say, in that you can assign different privacy levels. So privacy, the enemy of privacy is collaboration. So one of the things we're trying to find a balance between privacy and collaboration here on WikiTree. So one of the things is that anyone born 150 years ago, you really can't privatize those people. There's probably no compelling, either born 150 or died more than 100 years ago. Those are required to be open, so they won't. Open is the most open, no pun intended there. You have sort of a scale of different privacy levels here. So you've got unlisted, which would be used for living people. So some people, particularly, there are members that if someone's recently passed, or if their information about a deceased person could still be, there could be information that for some reason the person managing that page doesn't really want to share that with because the information is about a mother or father or grandfather that is very personal, still personal to the people living. You do have the ability to privatize some of that information within WikiTree, and then that person can decide to share it with family members, for example, but not the general public. So I kind of like this in that it gives people flexibility. It also prevents people from privatizing large parts of the tree for no compelling reason. And back in, I knew in 2000, it's been a while since 2018, but we made a change in 2018, given some of the European privacy concerns that were called GDPR at the time, that any living, anyone that you put in living that's not a member of WikiTree, they must be completely unlisted. We used to allow different levels of privatization of those, but that's just to protect the privacy of people, particularly people that are not public figures. So take a drink here. So WikiTree does have the ability to work with DNA, but it's not terribly obvious at first glance sometimes. So on WikiTree, I'll show you a screen with some DNA information on it on the next slide. But with WikiTree, you do have the ability to enter who's taken a test. So the volume, so you're not going to use WikiTree, like where I can get sucked into hours and hours and days of tracking DNA matches on, whether it's Ancestry, 23andMe, MyHeritage, or Family Tree DNA, or even Living DNA. I've taken tests there. So we don't do a DNA matching thing on WikiTree. What we use it is you can put who's taken a test, or if you've taken a test, and as you go up your family, go up your tree looking for ancestors, it'll tell you the other people that have taken a DNA test. I find this really useful because it lets me confirm or reject relatives. It also lets me find out who's done Y DNA testing. I've only got one that's of great interest on my line, but hope springs eternal. So it really starts with the tree, not the DNA results. So when you put in your DNA, when you put in DNA information, you're going to enter the name of the test. You're not going to download a bunch of, you're not going to download that big honking file from your DNA like you would if you're going to put into something like a GEDmatch. So I've, as an example of DNA, I've taken one of my other distant grandfathers that actually I wasn't expecting him, but he had a lot of matches within WikiTree. So there's one person that's taken a Y test. So they list those up at the top, William Malakote. Typically, these people will have the same surname, not always, if there's been a non-paternal event. And then there's other people that have listed here. And the value here is like I can go in. So I'm listed here as having taken all these various tests. You can go in and look at test details and maybe go to I can go to GEDmatch and see if I've actually got a match with Mary Thomas. I could go into these different people and see and check to see if there's matches that I haven't noticed yet. They're also great people to. These are typically good people to collaborate with because not only they're in WikiTree, but they've put enough of their tree for us to connect to, and they've told us about their DNA test. So that they tend to be more motivated genealogists than perhaps some of the other 950,000 people we have out here. So we've kind of gone through some of the basics of what a page looks like for an individual. I didn't get into the editing. That's of how you edit the page, but all the information you saw up there you can certainly do it when you click the edit button. But there are more ways than I can imagine, I think, to collaborate on WikiTree. So one of the challenges I have, much like I do with genealogy, is deciding where I want to start. Is trying not to do too much. There is geographic collaboration. My personal history is I have a lot of early American roots, which means you tend to go back to Germany, England, Scotland, those areas. I don't have a lot of Southern European roots or any other major racial groups in my DNA background or my genetic background. But I've taken a particular fancy to Scotland. So the ones that are green on this screen are the ones that I've focused on, but I've listed other ones. And keep in mind, there's hundreds and hundreds. So this is just a sampling of groups. There's also the other one. There's groups for population, and I'll just call Arab-based group for lack of a better term. So there's Magna Carta groups. There's Huguenots. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Arcadians, the folks from Canada. There's a group called pre-1500. We do kind of restrict who could work on some of the older profiles because they tend to be hard to work on. So I'm in the pre-1500 group, so I'll spend time there, particularly for people that aren't certified yet. I can work on simple things. I'm not the best at medieval genealogy, but I know what I know and I know what I don't know. But I've got folks on New Netherlands. I probably should make that green. I'm doing a little bit with these guys now. And there's some really serious efforts on the Magna Carta recently and the Mayflower. So Mayflower's in the news because I think they just hit their 500th recently, if I got the math right. There's also ways if you are a friendly, outgoing person, you can be a mentor to new members. We do have people so part of the new experience, someone will reach out and say, "Hi, welcome to Make WikiTree," and I'll see comments every so often like, "Yeah, some bot reached out to me." It's like, no, it's really, we send the greeters and mentors. They do have templates they use that are, so they're not writing the same thing over and over again. But it is really, they are really humans back there trying to help out. If you start putting a lot of profiles and say, "I'll put in sources later," they might have a friendly reach out and say, rather than put lots of people in, why don't you focus on those ones that you just put in? You can help with the help system. Again, I mentioned before, there's a core set of employees, but a lot of what's done with WikiTree, particularly explaining how to use it, is done by the user community. And there's also recently there's a lot of videos showing up on YouTube about how to do very specific things in WikiTree. So take advantage of those. I'm a brute force kind of guy. I have to fail. I have to try really hard to do something before I go to the videos. But there's people that I know in some of my genealogy communities, their first step is rather than click, they'll want to watch a video that explains how to do things, or go to a web page that explains, do step A, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. However you want to learn, there's those abilities to do that within WikiTree. And we're also very serious about trying to create a clean, accurate tree. So imagine how hard that is even for our own trees. It's even a bigger challenge, I think, with a collaborative tree where multiple people are working on things, and you have different people at different skill levels. There's people that know certainly they're a lot better genealogists than I am, and there's other people like, could you please document what you're putting in? Sometimes you want to send them a little note about, or you just make mistakes. And there's people out there that will watch and help improve the overall tree, and that would include updating content that you might have changed. So there's something called data doctors, where there's one of our volunteers in Europe has created this really cool system where he'll highlight about, I think it's up over 100 now, potential. Some things are clearly errors, potential errors in the tree. You can find out which ones are for your relatives, or you can slice and dice through those, and you can just bring up a list of those and improve those profiles. There's a group called the Profile Improvement Project, where if people haven't written much of a bio, these are the writers of our community, and they like to write more expansive bios rather than he was born, he died, he married, he had 14 kids. You can see that in you can see that in the fact part of our the WikiTree page. So you really want to have an explanation of, gee, he was a farmer, he belonged to this church, he was part of the he was involved in these different activities. So we like to tell stories about people. So that's what those folks do. Connectors, that's a kind of a newer area where people are trying to connect as many people to themselves as possible. And the arborists are people that look for duplicates. We don't like duplicates out there. We have mechanisms to prevent them from coming in, but they do sneak in because of spelling variations. And when you create new profiles on WikiTree, it will do some detection of duplicates, but it's not perfect, particularly for older profiles where spellings are very, and you may not know the exact birth dates and death dates of people. So there's people that work in all those areas. I spend time in some of those, more time in the data doctors than other things. There are a bunch of what we call free space pages, where every page is not just a page per person. And one of them is we have surname projects, for example. So there's a page I put out here for my maternal grandfather on Porterfields, where I can talk about the surname in general. If you go down, it's a fairly large page. I'll go down in the different groups of Porterfields. I have a goal of trying to see if we can connect them all together. They've got an interesting history of trying to get a large group of them to try to get to America. So I tell part of that story on this page, and then link to other websites that have even more details on the Porterfields, for example. If you like being encouraged and prodded, and you like to collect attaboys, we have something called badges on WikiTree, which on one hand I would say that I'm not that into, but I put this slide on the screen. I put this slide in my presentation, so apparently I am. So I've been here a long time, so I've got about 139 badges. Some are cooler than others. If you do a certain amount of edits per month, if you do 100 or 1,000, you get you get tagged. I won't go on. If you participate in one of our thons, I'll talk about those in a moment. If you're certified at certain levels, if you participate in Data Doctor, also once you get DNA tested, there's all sorts of badges that you can use out there. It also is useful. I'll go look at people's badges also to know who I'm talking to. It's a useful way to quickly find out what that person is interested in also. So making the tree more accurate. There's this database suggestions that I mentioned. I kind of talked about that already. We've got the merging and the other comments I would make about tree accuracy. I kind of covered a lot of these already. It's kind of got off on this. So the GEDCOM imports only before 1700, and we do check for duplicates before importing. And as we said, please cite sources, and please and we'd strongly encourage you to collaborate. So this is a interesting social community. So there's YouTube meetings that people frequently have, and they're very lively. And I don't attend them. I go back and forth in terms of attending them, but I haven't been on some of those. We also have social events around getting at work done. So we have these source-a-thons where we'll try to do as much sourcing as we can in a 3-day period. We'll do a clean-a-thon where we try to connect, where we try to clean up profiles. We do these once a year, so they end up being kind of once a quarter type of things. We do the connect-a-thons where we try, that's a little bit tougher project, where we try to find orphans and get them attached to the screen. You have the ability to thank and be thanked. Those thanks show up on your profile. There's things like picture of the week. If you want to submit a picture of the week, there's a profile of the week that is typically chosen by WikiTree, that's someone famous, and they'll send you an email, your weekly email, and you can click on that and see if you're related to that person. Member of the week, I was one of those a few years ago. I'm not sure why, but they somehow sought me out. So when you're a member of the week, they will ask you to do a little bio, tell you more about yourself. And so I did that a few years ago. That was kind of nice. So you can receive and you can award badges to people. Some seem to be more important than others. At the end of the day, they don't buy you a cup of coffee or anything. They're just sort of a nice thing to do if you like that. The other thing on the social side is and collaboration side, there's something called genealogist to G to G. It's what we refer to it. Stands for genealogy to genealogist. That is a great place, particularly for new people, to ask questions, and also if you've got a complex challenge you're trying to solve. I've posted things out there like I've got a roadblock on trying to do something. And if you have an error, you can report stuff out there, or a question, or even a suggestion, and people will come back and comment about it. And it is you will, as communities go, if you have something of a general purpose nature, you'll almost always get multiple people commenting and answering your questions. There are a large group of people out there that are monitoring these and try to be helpful. And finally, I don't use this a whole lot, but there's a Discord server. If you're familiar with Discord, that's another way to engage with other users. There's a fairly large Discord server community out here, and so I thought I'd talk about some of the other things that we've been doing the last couple of years. There was something called a WikiTree challenge 2 years ago, or last year, 2021, sorry, where each week a whole slew of WikiTree volunteers decided to help expand the trees of these different people in our community. So there were 52 of them that year. And here are some of hopefully some of these, if you're a genealogist, well, Thomas is I think he's more of a Chicago area guy, but I think he's got a national reputation also. Judy Russell is the legal genealogist. And many of these people hopefully will be well known. So, but yeah, and they reported the stats about how many ancestors and cousins they found for these people. And it was kind of amazing. And they had, each one of these people would come to a meeting, a webcast, I think it was on Wednesdays. They would introduce them and do the sort of the mini reveal of what they'd found. And I sat on Cece's, and it was kind of interesting because she's a professional genealogist. She goes, yeah, I shouldn't have time to work on my own tree. So she really, and she brought her son, or I think it was son with, and I was stunned by how excited she was with all the work that the community had done. And that really kind of hit home about that's really what WikiTree is all about. This year, what we've done on WikiTree is, when I say we, I really haven't participated in these challenges. There's only so many things you can do, but WikiTree, it's focused more on famous non-genealogists. So I'm not sure how they picked them, but there's a whole wide variety of people. I think they threw Angela Lansbury in at the last moment, although I don't know because she just recently passed. She just showed up recently. But you have people from business, from sports, to entertainment. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Jimmy Wales, I think, is the guy that does is Wikipedia, one of the founders. I've kind of gone through some of these. I don't know if I necessarily need to cover all of my WikiTree interests here. Let me just kind of look through what I haven't. I've really kind of I do something on WikiTree every day. I love writing biographies. I'm kind of into surname studies. This is really useful for surnames. So there's a surname capability here, but I also use it in conjunction with the Guild of One Name Studies on the UK. They do different things. Data doctoring, I spend a lot of time with. I enjoy helping and collaborating with others. I used to be a what's called a ranger. It was one of the rangers are folks you take an hour or two slot and you watch what's going on in the tree, and you look for people that might be doing malicious things, or maybe people that are new and they're just doing things that they need a little help. So the malicious thing, it happens every so often where people try to damage the tree. So the rangers have an important role. It is a relatively rare thing. I did rangering for a few years. I don't know that I really encountered anything. I think maybe once I encountered something I thought was malicious, and then there's other people I can escalate it to and say, hey, I think there's an issue here, and they can take a more serious look at it. I get into the whole connect to famous people sometimes. Like I'm a big Harry Chapin fan. If you're into folk music, I've checked to see how many presidents I'm related to. Kevin Bacon has sort of become a running joke here because of the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. We've sort of incorporated that into WikiTree. I also started doing it for town founders here of the town I live in, as I've gotten more involved in the historical society. So, and I'm also a team captain for some of the Wikithons. Team captain of probably the smallest team by now. So that's some of the stuff that I do. So if you haven't gathered from my enthusiasm, I'm kind of excited about WikiTree. This is my caveat screen though here on the WikiTree challenges. I think there are some challenges in WikiTree to just be aware of. Don't let them spook you, but there are things to be aware of going in. So it's not, the first one I have is it's not always easy to collaborate. So I've had a few places where I've annoyed somebody when I've made a change they didn't agree with. These things are rare, but you need to be aware they come up with. And I don't think WikiTree is for everybody. I've talked to some of my friends and they view their genealogy as very private and they want it to be a one-way street. And the example I would give is for people my age group, when we were in grade school, there's a little checkbox that says plays well with others. If you don't get that checkbox, WikiTree is probably the wrong place for you, because you do have to play well with others in WikiTree. It's really a hardcore requirement. It's not a place where you just dump your tree off and never come back. So it is a participatory. It really is participatory. So place to be. Writing biographies can be hard. I think a lot of us aren't great writers. Also, I didn't get into it, but to get the screens to look a certain way, to get a link on there, to put make something clickable, you use this thing called a markup language. Now, I have a computer science type background, so it's kind of a no-brainer for me. There's other people that will say, oh, I have to program these screens. And I don't think it's really programming, but you have to learn a little bit of a script language, if you will. The other thing that's nice is, since every page is editable, I've looked at pages and said, how did the person do that? I'll go edit that page, and then I'll find out what the technique they use to make that page look better. So I've incorporated some of my stuff, some of the visual ideas from other pages that I've learned from others. So I've had people, when I talk to people about why they don't use the WikiTree, one of the comments is that, well, there's a lot of profiles that aren't perfect out there. And I would have I would have two observations about that. One is I would agree. And number two, for each year I've been involved in WikiTree, it's gotten drastically better, just given that there's a fairly large army of people out there trying to improve the tree. In our first few years in WikiTree, probably before I was involved, we did allow lots of massive, just so the tree could get to a certain size. We had lots of people importing really large GEDCOMs, and they weren't always well sourced. We're kind of working our way back particularly through all these different geographic teams. There's the people that are involved with the Scots teams, the English teams, the German teams, all these. There's ones for active ones for South Africa. There's ones for Sweden and things and different areas. There's groups that know the sources in those areas, those older sources, and they can source things. And they can also tag and remove the mythical characters that have popped into the tree. So, and the other challenge I find personally with WikiTree is it's the challenge I find with genealogy is you can just decide to work on something at 9 in the morning and 3 or 4, 12 hours later, you don't know how you wandered into some other area. So it's a challenge to focus. So, you saw my screen of all the different things I'm interested in. I have to make sure I stay focused on specific goals. So that challenge will be there for WikiTree also. So anyway, in conclusion, I'm hoping you got a basic understanding of WikiTree. Maybe not understand everything about WikiTree, but at least get a basic understanding how to start. And I hope that if you have not used WikiTree before and you just came to our WikiTree days to learn more, I hope it enticed you to join. And if you're just an occasional or infrequent user, I'm hoping that we encourage you to make WikiTree part of, a more serious part of your genealogical toolkit, if you will. And finally, if there's anything that if there's any questions people had, I'm not seeing the questions that have come in, so hopefully Asher will be doing that. If there's any questions, she can raise them up with me. But if there's something you think of later, again, my name's Marty Acks. I'm the only Marty Acks out there on the internet, so you can find me there, or you can find me on martyacks@gmail.com. So again, thanks.
Thank you so much, Marty. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. We do have a few questions that were asked, and I'll just add them to the screen here so you can see them come up. The first one that was asked, how can I identify an adopted child?
Let's see. So there's a couple different ways to deal with adoption. There was a really good meeting yesterday that talked about adoption. So if it's someone, I'm going to give maybe not a direct answer, so I'm asking it again differently. But one of the things I just found out yesterday is if you're adopted, and I actually am half adopted on my birth father's side, we do allow you to put, I was beating home the whole idea that you only have one profile per person, including yourself. There is an exception to that rule, and that's if you're adopted. So you are allowed to have both a profile that goes down your adopted family and your birth family. And some people do that. I may do that. I haven't thought about it that hard. So, but there is, so I haven't done a lot with adoption on this on WikiTree. So
I'm adding to the comments the link for how to set up your profile if you're adopted. There's a space page that talks about how to do that. So I just shared that. And then the next question was, I think she's asking, how do you put pictures in your tree?
Yeah, so there's I'm trying to think if I did that. So there's a couple of things. You can add as many pictures and they show up on the right side of your profile. I think I showed that with my Paul Porterfield. I just had one picture for him. And you can choose which picture shows up at the top of your page, and that picture will probably show up on other places in WikiTree. The other thing that's cool is since you are building web pages with WikiTree, you do have the ability to put them in line with put on the right side or left side. And there's some really nice I've done that with a few of my profiles. And you can put a picture out there. You can put, like I've got this certificate for it's still on my desk. It's apparently for joining the Scottish Rites. I'm gonna take this to the local copy store, and I'll probably put that out on Paul Porterfield's page.
That's
so
great.
I just thought it was a cool artifact. So you can certainly do that. On my mom's page, I put a brick that It's at the school she used to teach at. One of those on a pathway. So I just thought that was it was put out there by friends of hers. So I thought that was a nice touch. So
that's really cool.
And the one and please respect copyrights if it's not your picture. So speaking as a former software developer and not having like having my intellectual property stolen. So
yeah. The other thing you can do too is if you have like pictures of a certain event that your family did, like a reunion or something, that you can have what's called a space page to add pictures to. That's another way that you can add pictures to WikiTree. So that is another question that somebody had. What's a space page?
So a space page roughly is any page that's not a it's not a person. So the person pages have a certain look and feel to them. They have all the genealogy stuff on them. They tend to be they are the everything else. It's almost like the Wikipedia of WikiTree, if you will. And the other thing I didn't get into, there's this thing called categorization, so that you can have, there's pages, for example, for cemeteries, as people adopt cemeteries within WikiTree. There's pages for surname projects. There's thousands of them out there for that. But it's not a starter place, but it's a great place where you want to get more information and you're just bogging down a person's page. So I've had people like they'll take a older ancestor and they'll have like 6 generations of people on it, or they'll tell the same story about the family origins on for multiple generations. That would be better pushed off to a surname or a space page associated with the surname.
Yeah. And the link.
And Azure's actually more experienced on a lot of things than I am here. So,
no, feel free to I added the link for the free space profile help page in there. The next question, is it possible to locate contributors?
Yeah, so one of the cool things, if you're, I was a Wikipedia editor before I joined WikiTree. So WikiTree uses the same underlying technology that's extremely heavily modified. Excuse me. And one of the options is there's a change button, so you can see all the changes that have been made. Family Search has something similar, except the nice thing with WikiTree is you can see exactly what the person changed. And sometimes I was mentioning, sometimes, and I've even done it myself, where I started putting all the whole slew of stuff in, and all of a sudden this information was for the child or the parent, and I mucked it up. And so there is you can revert a change, and we do use the ability to revert a change can also be used if this is relatively rare and from my experience, but if you get somebody abusing the site, you can go in and revert a bunch of changes very quickly rather than having to retype them by hand. So I use that also to find collaborators. So and I've figured out what people like. There's a guy I work with that's really good with Scottish profiles, and he's finding these sources that I didn't know existed. You may know who I'm talking about, Azure. And but he so I'm looking at the change log, like, I got to get to know this guy. So it is a place. So the tracking contributors is a great way to find people you want to get to know and reach out to. So
I love that you could see how they're doing things and learn how to do stuff from them.
Yeah, so everything you're doing is out in public here. So so
okay, here's the next question.
Yeah, so great question on sourcing. The answer I'm going to give you is going to be is really not a totally WikiTree specific question. Well, I actually take it back. There is one really cool thing I think that WikiTree encourages is when you have sources that have conflicting information, there's a specific area on a profile that we encourage called research notes. It goes on a very specific place in the bio. You have a section that has biography. Then you go on below that and have lots of facts about the profile. And then just before the sources, if you've got questions on the research, if you've got questions that or you really don't know, and you're just saying, here's what fact A is, here's what fact B is. I'm assuming fact A is correct, and here's why.
Yeah.
So it's like a poor man's version of the genealogical proof standard. I don't know that anyone, not too many people probably write to that standard here, but we're trying to do that with the research section, it's specifically called the research notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got tons of that, and that also is one of the things I like about WikiTree, because that stuff gets hidden in my family tree maker, and it's even harder to put into on Ancestry or in family search. I mean, they all have places for them, but the
They're
nice
not as
thing,
visible.
yeah, they're not as visible. So it's just right there in front and center. And then when you're talking about that, you typically want to say blah 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 source A, and then you link to source A, and this is what this person said. And sometimes the people that you're not calling them out, but you're saying, this noted researcher on this profile has said this, and you put a link to their profile. And I'm generally doing that when I'm citing them as an expert, not when I'm saying they're wrong. But yeah, so that's inaccurate or incomplete information is a common problem. Not just death certificates. So thanks for the
Yeah,
question.
because the kid or the daughter-in-law might not have the correct information about, maybe the birth date or something. She could be it could be wrong. So yeah, the research notes.
I was just looking one yesterday for somebody I really care, one of my ancestors, and there's two totally different surnames on the. Actually, I think these are marriage records where they list. Was it one of the states where they list the spouses or the parents' surname, and the mother's, particularly the mother's maiden name. It's like, and they were close enough that maybe they were typos, but it didn't seem like it. And
yeah, I had one marriage record where this the father's name, it was backwards, the first name and the last name.
yeah.
So it was Jones Ames or something like that instead of Ames
Yep.
Jones. So,
and then in the perfect world, other people will read this and say, "Oh, I know more about this," and that does happen frequently. It doesn't happen the next day, but it happens over time.
Yeah.
And that's the cool collaborative part of this. So.
Yep. And it looks like we don't have any more questions.
Okay. Well, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the day. I know I sat in on a few sessions yesterday. I missed a couple because yard work was calling, and I'm hoping to watch some of those. I believe, from what I've heard, is that all the sessions will be available for the next 30 days. So if you don't get to them today, I encourage you to listen to them or watch them, if you will, over the next month.
Yeah, the ones from yesterday will be there for 30 days, but all the ones from today, all the project ones, will be there, be on the channel for, I don't think they're taking them off. So they
okay. Okay, good. Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, so they'll just stay there. So we'll see everybody around, and join us in the Zoom if you can. It's a fun feature. We'll see everybody later.